Just go ahead. On the cuts camera, facing me at the moment. Yes, correct. No. Unilateral is on the head on. I'm on the cut. I'm doing cutting and
We'll be giving
waiting for the one. I need to look up the cut. Can you see my picture? I will be doing cuts as well from here.
Put that in first.
Mary?
Give mic check. Yes, I did.
how much pressure he has been under. But that has been the storyline here for years. The difference is, as Jeff was saying, is that kind of the anti-establishment fervor out there has been building even more. And all you have to do, Wolf, is look at some of the statements from some of the kind of outside conservative groups, those that John Boehner himself has more and more been very critical of, at his own peril, probably, but he has kind of been had enough of, effectively declaring victory, saying that they feel that they have worked hard enough to push somebody like him. This is a stunning and abrupt
Zippity doo dah, zippity yay. My oh my, what a wonderful day. I used to sing that on my way to work in the morning. Listen, my mission every day is to fight for a smaller, less costly, and more accountable government. And over the last 5 years, our majority has advanced conservative reforms that will help our children and their children. We're now on track to cut government spending by $2.1 trillion over the next 10 years. We've made the first real entitlement reform in nearly 2 decades. And we've protected 99% of the American people from an increase in our taxes. And we've done all this with a Democrat in the White House. So I'm proud of what we've accomplished. But more than anything, my first job as Speaker is to protect the institution. A lot of you know that my plan was to step down at the end of last year. I decided in November of 2010 that when I was elected Speaker that serving 2 terms would have been plenty. And but in June of last year, when it became clear that the majority leader lost his election, I frankly didn't believe it was right for me to leave at the end of last year. So my goal was to leave at the end of this year. So I planned, actually on my birthday, November 17th, to announce that I was leaving at the end of the year. But it's become clear to me that this prolonged leadership turmoil would do irreparable harm to the institution. So this morning I informed my colleagues that I would resign from the speakership and resign from Congress at the end of October. Now, as you've often heard me say, this isn't about me. It's about the people. It's about the institution. Just yesterday, we witnessed the awesome sight of Pope Francis addressing the greatest legislative body in the world. And I hope that we will all heed his call to live by the golden rule. But last night I started to think about this, and this morning I woke up and I said my prayers, as I always do, and I decided, today's the day I'm going to do this. As simple as that. That's the code I've always lived by. If you do the right things for the right reasons, the right things will happen. And I know good things lie ahead for this House in this country, and I'm proud of what we've accomplished, especially proud of my team. I've been here my 25th year here, and I've succeeded in large part because I've put a staff together and a team together, many of which have been with me for a long time. And without a great staff, you can't be a great member, and you certainly can't be a great speaker. I want to thank my family for putting up with this all these years. My poor girls, who are now 37 and 35, their first campaign photo was in July of 1981. And so they've had to endure all this. It's one thing for me to have to endure it. I've got thick skin. But the girls and my wife, they've had to put up with a lot over the years. Let me express my gratitude to my constituents who've sent me here 13 times over the last 25 years. You can't get here without getting votes. And I said this often. People ask me, what's the greatest thing about being speaker or about being an elected official? And I said, well, it's the people you get to meet. I've met tens of thousands of people in my own congressional district that I would never have met other than the fact that I decided to run for Congress. And over the years, as I've traveled on behalf of my colleagues in the party, I've met tens of thousands of additional people all over the country. And you meet rich people, you meet poor people, you meet interesting people, probably a few boring ones along the way. But I can tell you that 99.9% of the people I meet on the road, anywhere, could not be nicer than they've been. It's been wonderful. It's been an honor to serve in this institution. And with that, all right, Junior, go ahead.
Speaker Boehner, you were noticeably overcome with emotion yesterday.
Really?
With Pope Francis.
What a surprise.
I'm curious, as if you reached this decision last night, if the grace of Pope Francis led you to this decision.
No. Yesterday was a wonderful day. It really was. And was I emotional yesterday? I think I was. I was really emotional in a moment that really no one saw. As the Pope and I were getting ready to exit the building, we found ourselves alone. And the Pope grabbed my left arm and said some very kind words to me about my commitment to kids and education. And the Pope puts his arm around me and kind of pulls me to him and says, "Please pray for me." Well, who am I to pray for the Pope? But I did.
If it wasn't the Pope, what was it?
Listen, it was never about the vote, all right? There was never any doubt about whether I could survive a vote. I don't want my members to have to go through this. I certainly don't want the institution to go through this. And so, especially when, I knew I was thinking about walking out the door anyway. So it's the right time to do it, and frankly, I am entirely comfortable doing it.
Mr. Speaker, I've heard you say before that a leader who doesn't have anybody following him is just a guy taking a walk.
That's right.
So
I got plenty of people following me, but this turmoil that's been churning now for a couple of months is not good for the members, and it's not good for the institution. And if I wasn't planning on leaving here soon, I can tell you I would not have done this.
If I may just continue, there are people who are on the right in your caucus and even outside of this institution who have been wanting you to step down for some time, who feel that they have a victory today. Do you feel that you were pushed out?
No, the members, I'm glad I made this announcement at the conference with all of my Republican colleagues because it was a very good moment to help kind of rebuild the team. Listen, I feel good about what I've done. I know that every day, I've tried to do the right things for the right reasons and try to do the right thing for the country.
How can this not be a moment of turmoil? You said you thought about leaving 2 years ago after Canada, but it was a time you said this would have pitched the House in turmoil. You have to keep the government open in a couple of days, debt ceiling. There's going to be one
I'm gonna
person
be here
described
for
as
another-
the barn burner of leadership.
I'm going to be here for another 5 weeks, and I'm not going to leave. I'm not going to sit around here and do nothing for the next 30 days. There's a lot of work that needs to be done, and I plan on getting as much of it done as I can before I exit.
And as a result, though, does that make it easier in some ways to make some tougher decisions, maybe relying on Democrats to keep the government open next week or something?
I'm going to make the same decisions I would have made regardless of this.
Speaker, you've made no secret of your frustration with some members of your far-right flank and some outside groups. You've used words like knuckleheads and some other words we probably can't use on television. Had you just had enough? And how will anything be different for the next speaker?
No. Let me tell you, I would not describe it as having had enough. That's not it at all. When you're the Speaker of the House, your number one responsibility is to the institution. And having a vote like this in the institution, I don't think is very healthy. And so I've done everything I can over my term as Speaker to strengthen the institution. And frankly, my move today is another step in that effort to strengthen the institution.
But won't the next speaker face the same thing?
Hopefully not.
That's my question, Mr. Speaker. How will Washington be different because you leave this institution? What should people watching this expect the House and Congress to do going forward if you're not here?
Well, if the Congress stays focused on the American people's priorities, there will be no problem at all. And while we have differences between Democrats and Republicans, the goal here, as one of the leaders, is to find the common ground. Listen, I talked to President Bush and President Obama this morning. I've talked to all my legislative leaders, who I have a very good relationship with all of them. Because at the end of the day, the leaders have to be able to work with each other, trust each other, to find the common ground, to get things done. So if the Congress stays focused on what is important to the American people, they'll get along just fine.
Can you tell us how your conference reacted to the news?
Oh, I say they were shocked. Surprised.
A little more on that? Maybe how the leadership itself reacted?
Yeah, I told Mr. McCarthy about 2 minutes before I spoke what I was going to do. I had to tell him 5 times because he didn't believe me. I said, "You better believe me."
Should McCarthy be the next speaker?
Listen, I'm not going to be here to vote on the next speaker, but that's up to the members. But having said that, I think that Kevin McCarthy would make an excellent speaker.
Who was the first person you told, and what did they say?
Wow. Well, I told my wife. She's good. I told my chief of staff and I talked late yesterday, and I told him I was thinking that today might be the day. And I told him I'd sleep on it. So before I went to sleep last night, I told my wife, I said, I might just make an announcement tomorrow. Well, what do you mean? What kind of announcement? Well, I might just tell them it's time to go. So this morning I woke up and walked up to Starbucks as usual and got my coffee and came back and read and walked up to Pete's Diner and saw everybody at Pete's and got home and thought, yep, I think today's the day. So my senior staff was having a meeting at 8:45 and kind of walked in before I opened the house and told them, this is the day. What's going to happen sometime? Well, why not today?
When the next election might be held?
No. Paul?
What advice will you give Kevin McCarthy based on your 5 years? What advice do you give him to avoid the same pitfalls that you've come across?
Well, I'll tell Kevin, if he's the next speaker, that his number one responsibility is to protect the institution. Nobody else around here has an obligation like that. Secondly, I tell him the same thing I've just told you. If you just do the right thing every day for the right reasons, the right things will happen. You all know me. My colleagues know me. I'm always straight with them. You know, they may not like the answer they get, but they'll get an honest answer every single time they come to my office. It's just an easy way for me to do my job.
You originally planned to announce this on your birthday, and if it wasn't the Pope, what factors sort of weighed in on your decision to do this now?
Just all this stuff I read about in the paper, and you know, it's I really don't want the institution hurt, and I don't want my colleagues hurt. I don't want to put my colleagues through all this. For what? So, yes.
What are you going to miss?
Pardon me?
What will you miss?
What will I miss? Well, of course, all of you. I don't know what I'm going to miss because I haven't missed it yet. But I'll certainly miss the camaraderie of the House. You know, I may tell you another story that was really kind of interesting. Maxine Waters and I, Democrat from Southern California, came here 25 years ago in the same class. Now, you know, there's nothing about my politics and Maxine Waters' politics that's even anywhere close. But yesterday, about 5:30, she called my office. I got a note that she called, so I called her back. And and she said, you know, I've watched you for 25 years here. We've came here together and watched your career, and watched you today. And she says, I just want to tell you something. I'm really proud of you. You know, listen, I've got the best relationships on both sides of the aisle because I treat people fairly and treat them honestly, but I'm going to certainly miss my colleagues. Yes.
To go back to this theme of trying to take turmoil out of the House and stabilize the institution, how do you think that it can become more stable? Several Republicans I talked to today from your conference said they don't think a new speaker will mean any new outcome, especially with an untested leader, maybe untested leadership. How could it become more stable?
As I mentioned earlier, the fact that I did this with my colleagues this morning, then we proceeded to have an hour and a half conversation, I thought was a unifying moment. And between that and the Pope's call for living by the Golden Rule yesterday, hope springs eternal.
Mr. Speaker, can you talk about what you think your legacy is as you're leaving? What are your most important accomplishments? And what are you going to do on November 1st? Are you moving to Florida?
I was never in the legacy business. You all heard me say it. I'm a regular guy with a big job. And I never thought I'd be in Congress, much less ever be Speaker. But people know me as being fair, being honest, being straightforward, and trying to do the right thing every day on behalf of the country. That's I don't need any more than that.
You seem very relieved in your speech right now. Yeah, I mean, by singing Zippity Doo-Dah, what are your plans next? And also, have you spoken to...
You know, when you make a decision this morning, you really haven't any time to think about what I'm going to do in the future. I have no idea. But I do know this. I'm doing this today for the right reasons. And you know what? The right things will happen as a result. Thanks.
Have you spoken to Pelosi at all?
Oh, yeah. President Obama. Please exit from the back due to the size of the crowd.
Yes, I am. Like, please, towards the back. Please, towards the back, please. Exit this way, please.